Good evening. That's the great sunset I'm just looking at here at the seaside in Istanbul. I've just come back from a great weekend with my church where we had the subject of obedience. Obedience is something that is so valuable and precious in many different areas of life. I'm thinking of the area that the Bible talks about, to obey leadership, to obey our governments. And of course that is sometimes a little bit tricky also right now in the situation we are experiencing in this country here in Turkey. We have to ask ourselves sometimes, to what point do we have to be obedient? And if the Bible talks about obeying those in authority, what does that actually mean in practice? So one thing that we learned there is that yes, we should submit and show respect to authorities, but where things start to clash with what God says, with His commandments, then of course God and His commandments have to have priority. And even in these cases where then maybe we should not obey what authorities say anymore, still how we do that should be done in a respectful way, in a way that gives honor to God, and definitely without violence or aggression. Another area where obedience is so important is in the church. God has also given authority and leadership in the church, and He wants us to obey to them because He has put them in their place and given them this responsibility to lead the flock. So let's keep that in mind and honor and respect our leaders in church, and accept the responsibility that God has given them and make their lives easy as far as possible. And then of course the far most important area where obedience is necessary is in our spiritual lives, being obedient to God. And also that is something we often struggle with. We want to go our own ways. We say, no, we live in this age of grace. It's not about keeping commandments, about keeping laws anymore. But obedience is really an area where it comes out what is really in our hearts, whether we are rebellious people, and the Bible has so strong words about rebellion, be it with Israel or in the New Testament where people have come against God's authority or the authority He has put in place. So yes, we have to watch our hearts to not be rebellious, but to submit to God, to be willing to embrace His commandments and the things He has given us to obey. And I was also, when pondering more about this past weekend, I thought, looking around also at Christian families, this is something I would really like to encourage parents to do. Please make obedience one of the highest, most beautiful goals in raising your children. I believe that if children learn to obey their parents in the family, that will take them such a long way in life, especially in their spiritual lives, because having learned to obey their parents, to listen to their words, to obey at once, and I see that so much, that parents have to say things 10 times before kids obey. And I know they have to learn it, but they should eventually learn it. If they learn that, it will make their spiritual lives as grown-ups as well so much easier, because they will have learned to listen to authority telling them something, and it will be much easier for them to obey if they have learned it as children. So I wish you all a great week under God's blessing, and that our faith would also be shown by us obeying God. Bye.